This is the quotation of Chairman Mao Tse-Tung, also known as the Little Red Book. Chapter 20. Building our country through diligence and frugality. We must see to it that all our cadres and all our people constantly bear in mind that ours is a big socialist country, but an economically backward and poor one, and that this is a very great contradiction. To make China rich and strong needs several decades of intense effort, which will include, among other things, the effort to practice strict economy and combat waste, i.e., the policy of building up our country through diligence and frugality. Quotation from On the Correct Handling of Contradictions Among the People, February 27th, 1957, First Pocket Edition, page 71. Diligence and frugality should be practiced in running factories and shops and all state-owned cooperative and other enterprises. The principle of diligence and frugality should be observed in everything. This people of economy is one of the basic principles, this principle of economy is one of the basic principles of socialist economics. China is a big country, but she is still very poor. It will take several decades to make China prosperous. Even then, we will still have to observe the principle of diligence and frugality. But it is in the coming few decades, during the present series of 5-year plans, that we must particularly advocate diligence and frugality, that we must pay special attention to economy. Quotation from An Introductory Note to Running a Cooperative Diligently and Frugality, circa 1955. The Socialist Upsurge in China's Countryside, Chinese edition, Volume 1. Wherever we happen to be, we must treasure our manpower and material resources, and must not take a short view and indulge in wastefulness and extravagance. Wherever we are, from the very first year of our work, we must bear in mind the many years to come, the protracted war that must be maintained, the counter-offensive, and the work of reconstruction after the enemy's expulsion. On the other hand, never be wasteful or extravagant. On the one hand, never be wasteful or extravagant. On the other, actively expand production. Previously, in some places, people suffered a great deal because they did not take the long view and neglected economy in manpower and material resources and the expansion of production. The lesson is there, and attention must be called to it. Quotation from We Must Learn to Do Economic Work, January 10th, 1945. Selected Works, Volume 3, page 244. In order to speed up this restoration and development, be that of agricultural production and industrial production in small towns or otherwise, we must do our utmost, in the course of our struggle for the abolition of the feudal system, to preserve all useful means of production and of livelihood, take resolute measures against anyone's destroying or wasting them, oppose extravagant eating and drinking, and pay attention to the thrift and economy. Quotation from a speech at a conference of cadres in the Shaanxi Suiyuan liberated area, April 1st, 1948. Selected Works, Volume 4, page 238. Thrift should be the guiding principle in our government expenditure. It should be made clear to all government workers that corruption and waste are very great crimes. Our campaigns against corruption and waste have already achieved some results, but further efforts are required. Our systems of accounting must be guided by the principle of saving every copper for the war effort, for the revolutionary cause, and for our economic reconstruction. Quotation from Our economic policy, January 23rd, 1934. Selected Works, Volume 1, page 145. A dangerous tendency has shown itself of late among many of our personnel, an unwillingness to share the joys and hardships of the masses, a concern for personal fame and gain. This is very bad. One way of overcoming it is to simplify our organizations in the course of our campaign, to increase production and practice economy, and to transfer cadres to lower levels so that a considerable number shall return to productive work. Quotation from On the Correct Handling of Contradictions Among the People, February 27th, 1957. First Pocket Edition, page 71. Production by the Army for its own support has not only improved the Army's living conditions and lightened the burden on the people, thereby making it impossible further to expand the Army. Okay, that made no sense. Allow me to reread that. Production by the Army for its own support has not only improved the Army's living conditions and lightened the burden on the people, thereby making it further possible to expand the Army. Okay, that is not a proper sentence in the English language. The phrasing here is wrong. That should be a comma, not a period, for one, and whatever, I'll read that as it should normally be rendered. Production by the Army for its own support has not only improved the Army's living conditions and lightened the burden on the people, thereby making it possible to further expand the Army, but in addition, it has had many immediate side effects. These are as follows. 1. Improved relations between officers and men. Officers and men work together in production and become like brothers. 2. Better attitude to labor. Since the Army began to produce for its own support, the attitude to labor has improved, and loafer ways have been overcome. 3. Strengthened discipline. Far from weakening discipline in battle and in Army life, labor discipline in production actually strengthens it. 4. Improved relations between the Army and the people. Once an armed force begins to keep house for itself, encroachments upon the property of the people seldom or never occur. As the Army and the people exchange labor and help each other in production, the friendship between them is strengthened. 5. Less grumbling in the Army about the government and improved relations between the two. 6. An impetus to the great production campaign of the people. Once the Army engages in production, the need for government and other organizations to do likewise becomes more obvious, and they do so more energetically. Also, the need for a universal campaign of the whole people to increase production naturally becomes more obvious, and this too is carried on more energetically. Quotation from On Production by the Army for its own support, and on the importance of the great movements for rectification and for production. April 27, 1945. Selected Works, Volume 3, pp. 327-28, which is to say pages 327 and 328. Some people say that if the Army units go in for production, they will be unable to train or fight, and that if the government and other organizations do so, they will be unable to do their own work. This is a false argument. In recent years, it says out Army units, but that should say our Army units. That's a typo. Our Army units in the border region have undertaken production on a big scale to provide themselves with ample food and clothing, and have simultaneously done their training and conducted their political studies and literacy and other courses much more successfully than before. And there is greater unity than ever within the Army, and between the Army and the people. While there was a large-scale production campaign at the front last year, great successes were gained in the fighting, and in addition, an extensive training campaign was started. And thanks to production, the personnel of the government and other organizations live a better life and work with greater devotion and efficiency. This is the case both in the border region and at the front. Quotation from We Must Learn to Do Economic Work, January 10th, 1945. Selected Works, Volume 3, pp. 243-44. This concludes Chapter 20. Chapter 21, Self-Reliance and Arduous Struggle, shall be enclosed in the following video of this series. Thank you for joining us, and have a wonderful evening.